All right. So Yang Gang, I got another good one for you today. There's a channel I was watching with this guy here, Sam Stoltz, where his channel is really more about his body, the exercise part of it, and financial stuff. That's his background. But then one day he did a deep dive on Andrew Yang on analytics, and he had my attention, of course, because I'm a nut about Yang. And so I jumped on his shit and I watched, I think, 3 or 4 videos now where I'm like, yo, this is a deep dive. How the hell do you do that? So I reached out and said, come on over. And he said, hell yeah. So here we are. So how you doing today, Sam?
Hey, what's going on? Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate you reaching out and for having me on.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time to do that.
Absolutely. Well, just so you guys know, we've talked for like an hour and a half before all this. We had to stop our discussion to just say, okay, let's start over, because we got on this other tangent. It was really fun discussion about life, and the psychology of life, really. But it was a fun discussion.
It was definitely a great conversation. So absolutely. What actually got me started in to notice Andrew Yang is I actually live my life in a very unique way from like a lot of the rest of the way the population lives. I'm very minimalistic in a lot of the behavior that I have, and I save like a ridiculous amount of like my percentage wise of what I make. And so I don't follow politics at all. I don't read even headlines. There might be like one headline that I would read as I scroll through like a news feed on when I read the news on my phone. Mm-hmm. But I don't pay attention to politics at all. And I was on YouTube and a Andrew Yang video came up. And it's strange, right? Because the algorithm recommends stuff that you like or thinks you're gonna like, and then you click on it, right? So I've never clicked on one of those videos, and this video comes up, and I don't remember the video what it was. And I watched it, and I was like, this guy thinks similar to how I think. And I was like, that's kind of interesting. So I dug down that rabbit hole a little bit, and then I didn't think much of it. Maybe watched 2 or 3 videos, 4 videos that night, and then went to bed. And then the next day, I was on Instagram, or a couple days later, and and they're 2 different companies, so the algorithm wouldn't be connected unless they're tracking something somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I see him coming up in my explore page, and as you mentioned, I do stuff a lot in like fitness and business and finance and mental stuff. Like it wouldn't show up in my feed ever. I don't follow or like any of that stuff on Instagram, and one of his posts comes up on my explore page. So or somebody related to that, mm-hmm. And that's what like made it. I was like, I need to check this out. If somebody that's so far off the beaten path in terms of politics and the way that I live my life, if this person shows up on my radar, it's something has to be going on that I don't know about. Mm-hmm. And so that led me down the path of like, it's a big rabbit hole, but I have a background in finance, and there's a thing called a CFA, which is if you invest in a 401k, there's mutual funds, and one of the managers or the top people in the fund probably has their CFA. It's a very quantitative, heavy, analytical thing for companies in the market, and I think that is probably the foundation of where it comes from. But I want to understand like what's going on, and I don't think that the media has an incentive to necessarily say the most accurate thing. I think there's much more of an incentive to gain awareness or get viewers. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that they necessarily have an incentive to tell the truth, because for whatever reason, there's financial incentives or other incentives behind it, whether it's propaganda, they're trying to push something, or whatever the case is. I don't need to be cynical, but there's different things about it. And it could just be that people are just like normally don't cover people who aren't in the realm of that circle, right? So they just don't give them much awareness. There's different psychological biases that like people tend to have. And actually, that's how I started covering all this stuff. Now I'm doing like a video a day about it, basically, where I'll look at, say, the Google search volume, and I'll stack rank them on the 12-month, on the 3-month, on the 1-month, and then I'll take an average and I'll stack rank them who were in the last debate to see who's number 1 on Google. Mm-hmm. Because to me, Google is, if you look it up, Google's the number 1 site on the entire planet. Mm-hmm. And the amount of attention that Google has is way more representative than I did some videos on where you actually take a deeper dive into the actual poll. So I looked at one from YouGov put on by The Economist, and the part that was like talked about in certain headlines was they had a sample size of 600. So when you look at this sample size that's on Real Clear Politics of 600 people that's supposed to slightly be representative of the entire population, to me, like a very quant heavy type dude, it just didn't make sense that like somebody who's so far off the beaten path of how I think and do things, that this person, Andrew Yang, shows up for me. And then to not have it be in other people's point of view, because you didn't see it. Like, and that's I actually first looked to see like what other stuff, and there wasn't like a ton. I mean, there was a lot of stuff out there, but it wasn't like, it was like you or some of the other channels that we watch, right? But it wasn't, there wasn't a ton of stuff on like the traditional media outlets, if you want to call it.
Yeah, the main.
And that's why I was like, what is going on here? So, and that's where I started looking into the YouTube search volume, the Google search volume. I like rank their websites, because I think that is actually probably one of the most relevant factors. Because if you rank, so what I do is I take all 10 candidates and their campaign websites, and then I stack rank them on 3 categories. So I'll stack rank based on their ranking in the US. So out of all sites in the US, who has the highest ranking, meaning the most people are going to, it's the most popular website out of the 10 candidates. And then the amount of time somebody spends on a site. So you can look at the average like minutes somebody spends on a site per visit, and I stack rank that for all 10 candidates. And then I do page views. So the page views and the minutes are indicators of attention, because
attention.
I have a site, right? Because that's what's really important, is I think gaining attention, because you can accomplish anything you want to accomplish with attention, whether it's financially speaking, or you have an objective of some sort, or a purpose or a cause to do that with.
Yeah.
And if I spend, people spend 1 minute and 26 seconds on my site, and people spend 8 minutes on your site, like there's a big difference there, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I want to try to capture by stack ranking them. And the same thing with the page views. If somebody views 3 pages on your site on average and 1.5 pages on mine, there's a difference. That you're either telling a better story, or your website's optimized better, or just more interesting. There's a bunch of different things going on. So I try to use that to capture the essence of like what Americans are thinking. And it tells a different story than some of the polls, which is kind of interesting, because the polling data says one thing, and then what I'm looking at says a different thing. They've been coming closer and closer as time goes on, but it is very interesting to watch.
Well, and that's what triggered me for you, because I think it was about the Google searches in a certain state versus the national average. I think it was Texas.
Yep.
Did you do Texas? You did Texas. You compared it to the United States, and then you had a graph and all that shit. I was like, good Lord, this is a unique point of view. Well, again, you have no association with any candidate. I looked at all your videos. I'm like, he's just doing it for shits and giggles. He's interested.
I literally, like, if you look, there's 1,300 videos on my channel, and anything 2 months or older has nothing to do with politics whatsoever, even slightly. It's just all been in with these last 2 months, and it's fascinated me to the point of like creating like a power rank. So I ranked 7 different factors, like, and I want like that to indicate the relevance of awareness in the US of like who's number one. So like I use social factors, like I use their Facebook growth rate over like the last 2 weeks, their Facebook, the number of likes on average that they're getting, and the growth rate in some of these factors, because you can't always compare apples to apples. If you have somebody like Bernie Sanders, who has a shitload of people following him on YouTube, he's got so many, versus say somebody like Cory Booker, who doesn't have a tremendous amount. So you want to, the absolute number is important, but also the growth rate is important. But you know what I mean? Bernie Sanders might have several 100,000 or a few million views every month, where Cory Booker might have less, but his growth rate's higher. So they're both telling interesting stories. So I try to do extract as much value as possible as I look at each one of these different factors. I'm curious to see how the data plays out for the donations, because that's released quarterly.
10 million is a big jump.
That's tremendous.
I did a video on that. There's a graph that I did where, I'll bring that up. Unfortunately, you guys can't see this. I don't know how to screen share. I'm not good at this. But it shows that at the bottom, Joe Biden had negative 30% growth. He lost 30% of his financing in the last quarter. Buttigieg was 23 down. Kamala lost 2%. Then Warren was up 28. Booker up 33. Sanders up 39. Marianne Williams doubled, 100% growth in 2 quarters. Andrew Yang, 257% growth in a 3-month period on donations. I mean, that tells a story. They're all kind of waffling, and he just says, whammo.
Completely. And I think you and I probably could have predicted this, because what we're seeing is
paying
not
attention.
told.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. The story that we're seeing is not told anywhere else.
And to me, now the interesting thing is going to be, now what are we going to do with this momentum? Are we going to average around 10 mil for the next couple quarters? Or are we going to continue the exponential growth? Can we make it $30 million in the next quarter?
I'm very curious how much thought, or if it was spontaneous, went into the tactic that he used at the last debate, where he had a call to action in front of. So did you see? I did the video on his guerrilla marketing. That's essentially what that was. Is just trying to garner attention at a lower cost than you would if you had to pay for it. Or build it organically.
Yeah.
And
why spend 120 grand on a 30-second commercial?
You have the viewership on the debate was like 14 million, estimated around a little bit over 14 million. And so if you look at the 14 million people, even if you have, say, a 1% or 50 basis point conversion to his site, and then you have 50% of that donate, that's a large impact. And then that doesn't include the amplification effect of myself, you, and all the other media outlets that are talking about it because it wasn't traditional. Yeah. And that creates it even more. So then there's this amplitude, and that the amplifying effect of everybody else talking about it is actually much greater than just the 14 million.
Well, and also, like, after he did that, he's got 10 families that he's given the free gift. That's what it is. But it can't be a gift because of IRS. So they got to work out the legal issues of that as far as taxes go.
Yes.
But there's a Japanese guy who was the son of the inventor of Alibaba in China, which is their Google. His name's Jun, Jun. He said, if you get 10 more, I'll donate 100. So he's inspired.
Which is a beautiful thing.
He inspires people from other countries to try and make a difference. Hold on 1 second. What's up, kid? When? Oh, here's my phone. My bad. There you go. Oh, sorry. There you go. My daughter's bored.
No worries. You were talking about June. And how he would go on.
Yeah, so here he is inspiring someone from China that has absolutely no skin in the game here directly. I'm sure he does indirectly. But he's inspired to say, I'll pay for 100 of them. That's $1.2 million donations to everyday American citizens to have 2 in every state now. Instead of 10 people total, 1/10 coverage, 2 in every state. I mean, that is significant. And
so I actually predicted or said that this should happen in a video about 2 weeks before this. It's on the channel where I actually analyzed his channel for just his YouTube channel specifically to see what things could be optimized to increase the awareness of what he's doing. And by the way, also too, for you and the viewers, is I don't actually follow a lot of like what anybody says other than, I mean, I follow a little bit of what Andrew Yang says, but I don't actually follow a lot of the context of what people are saying. I'll get comments and I don't have any context for what they're talking about sometimes,
Yeah.
because I don't follow the actual context of it. I think I follow Andrew Yang, but I'm not really following a lot of what else is going on.
The policies themselves. Huh?
And so I did the deep dive on his YouTube channel, and at the halfway through it, I actually was like, this should be, instead of spending money on ads, money should be spent to give to people and tell a story over the next 12 months. The amount of awareness that's where you're going to get that guerrilla marketing effect, where you can get $120,000 worth of advertising for 12 grand, right? There's a tenth of a cost, because the individual is going to tell the people that they're oh shit, I get $1,000 a month. This
the
is
whole community.
They're going to tell their community. They're probably going to post about it on their social, and then there's going to be a ripple effect, because those people are going to tell those people, and it's going to keep getting smaller and smaller of an effect. But what the part of the condition is, it's not just a $3,000. You have to have an interview with us once a month, and when you do that, you film their story and you tell that story, because that's what's going to. How do you think NBC or whatever will get ratings for the Olympics? They tell the story about the individual. Oh, this is Sam. His background was this. He did this. He did this. Oh, he struggled with this. Then they bring you on. Oh, here's his best friend, and he talks about how hard my life was. And then this other person was like, oh yeah, he was so driven, blah blah blah. And then the other person is like, and doing that with these people who are getting $1,000 a month is tremendous. To see that there's this is a real thing, and see that it's really impacting people's lives in a positive way. No conditions other than just an hour interview once a month or something.
Yeah, and the thing is there's theory, and then there's stuff that's just in practice. They can't have a proof of concept as far as on the economy, but they can definitely do a proof of concept on individual lives. 1 second. What's up?
Yep.
You said that I can come over, but later. She said she's going to be at home at 8.
Okay.
Like 8:30.
Okay. I can make that work. Okay, I'll move my live stream back for you.
Thanks, Dad.
All right, babe. I was gonna live stream at 8. So that'd be 5 p.m. West Coast, but I'll just move it back an hour.
Hey, when you go to live stream, let me know, and I will take the link, and I will be like, hey, I just did an awesome interview, blah blah blah. Go check it out. He's going live at 8 o'clock or whatever time you go live, and then I'll shoot it out on Twitter. I don't have a lot of followers, but I'm just starting to grow Twitter, and I can put it up on Instagram stories and that kind of thing as well.
Well, it's another ripple effect. Every share is a ripple.
100%. You get 3 extra people. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's like Amway. It's like Amway's concept without really being effective. Amway sucked, but anyway.
And I think that's a great segue, because that actually is what I think what we're seeing with Andrew Yang is, fundamentally, where they say grassroots, and I don't think a lot of it has necessarily been as grassroots as this. I think that this is a much more systemic support that for him, for people who have an opinion about him just based upon what media legacy players or whoever has talked about, where when you actually listen to an interview, I think that is impactful for a lot of people, and that it applies to a much broader set of the American population. And I think what you were just saying is happening with this campaign.
Well, and to me, the way he's going about it is not traditional. As far as the guerrilla marketing is really on podcasting and YouTube channels, and the Fox News. Like, he's only one of two. Him and Bernie, the only ones going on Fox News, and really go into the lion's den, if you will, and not just stand their ground, but get people. He said, "I'll take those with me. Now they're mine." Every vote for him that's from Trump is 2 votes technically. 1 less for Trump, 1 more for him. It's a twofer. It's a conversion rate, not just getting the apolitical. It's the absolutely involved politically, and to get them to switch sides. Like, I did an interview with a guy. There's a poll on Twitter started by a Twitter handler called Trump Warrior 45. His whole life was Trump. But he saw the things that Andrew Yang's policies would do, and he's like, well, you know what? Everybody thinks that he's so good. Let's see who the best man survives. And he put a poll on all of his followers are Trump supporters, typically, you know. He put a poll out there, and Yang Gang showed up and smashed it.
Cool. I think you and I both know that
Converted him.
The impact of like what Andrew Yang supporters are capable of doing online is tremendous.
Yeah,
it's on Twitter,
gnarly.
I noticed I did a little bit on Elizabeth Warren's channel, and then when I went to check back a week later, her comments were off on all of her videos. And I don't know, I have no idea, but the only people that have any type of exposure or people who are willing to be as communicative, whether it's comment section or whatever, is that I've been seeing since the data I've been looking at is Andrew Yang supporters. Like, well, nobody else. Bernie Sanders has a little bit, but not as much.
Yeah. Well, I think it's because of his website's transparency too. At first, you couldn't go on some people's websites without donating first. There's a paywall. Oh, really? Yeah, at first there's like, I'd say 75% of them were all paywalled. You got to donate and then you can go to the website. There's no zero or no thanks button at first. And then I made a point. I was like, listen, this guy's the most transparent. He has over 100-something policies. This is how we're going to do it. This is why we're going to do it. And this is how we're going to pay for it, which is a big difference from most candidates. Not just platitudes, it's a plan. That's a big difference.
And it's coming through. Go ahead.
Yeah,
we can see it in the data.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing I'm interested in the data, because I go off emotion right now and some statistics, but this is just what's available to the layman. You go into some shit that I don't even know how the hell you get to it. Like, how do you know someone's click-through rate? How do you know how long it's on a channel? How do you find that? Like this, I need to take like a 3-hour course just to do what you do on one video. Learn enough, bring more shit in to make it more complicated. Ugh.
It's fun for me. Clearly, I wouldn't do it. But the some of the data I think is just more like I do the donations, and there's 3 factors that I look at with donations. The first is this, I call it a savings rate, and candidates raise money and then they spend money, right?
Right.
And my theory is a lot of people think a high savings rate is a good thing. I mean, in reality, I do think a high savings rate is a good thing. I have a very high savings rate. But when you're trying to accomplish an objective, I think a low savings rate is probably more indicative of somebody who's actually putting an effort into something because they're trying to win, in my opinion. Yeah. The only person who I could say might not have a low savings rate, and I think the tide has shifted since I was originally seeing this, but would be potentially Joe Biden, because Joe Biden might have thought he had it locked him up or something, but then Andrew Yang comes along, and
with Warren and Bernie, and they're tied with them,
And what I'm seeing is Andrew Yang is actually leading in a lot of. So I have seven of these factors where so I have the savings rate, the I have 2 other factors on there, and then I take the average of them to see who is representative of the collective of America. Like the next factor in the donations is people who donate more than $200 or less than $200, because I think $200 to a lot of people in America would be tremendous. If you could have an extra $200 a month, it would really be impactful for a lot of people. It sounds like trivial to maybe some people, but I mean, I think an additional $200 a month is representative of the population that is supporting him, because the percentage of people who have a low donation and the higher percentage of the total donors who donate less than $200, I think, to me, it just is more representative of America as a collective versus somebody who's raising it from like large corporations or lobbyist groups, and he ranks well in both of these factors.
Or like
factors here.
$2,000 dinner plates type of thing too, which is very common.
From 25 people, you get all this money versus say 250,000 people that all donate 200. Yeah. I mean, it's just, to me, it's just way more representative of what's actually happening.
Well, it's more representative of potential votes, because the votes aren't a dollar amount; it's a vote. They're all the same vote.
You probably heard in the comment section or from people that like, oh, he's doing well online, but it's not going to play out in votes, right? Like, or something along those lines you may have heard. So I took a look at that and to see if there was anything that kind of supported that or one way or the other.
Yeah.
And what I found is some research from Pew Research Center. And the first interesting that I found is millennials who already represent the largest portion of the workforce.
Yes.
And the second thing I found is that age 53 and younger are going to represent nearly 65% of the vote in 2020. So when you combine both of these things together, as in millennials are representing the largest portion of generations in terms of the workforce participation, that group is starting to make decisions based upon the way that they believe the world should operate.
Yes.
And baby boomers or other people are not necessarily having that power or money to be able to do those things. And when you combine that with the average or the age between 53 and 0 or 53 and 18, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be about 63% of the total vote in 2020 would indicate to me that like 18 to 53 have probably a higher propensity to use social media and the internet than 54 and older. So I think what we're seeing online is actually way more representative of reality than it was in 2016. I think the things that like I'm doing or what we're talking about is represented in this data because you and I are following this, right? We're paying attention to this. And that's that group. We spend a lot of time on the internet. And that's, go ahead.
I wonder then, as a comparison, is for the 65% that are 53 to 18, what's the voting rate? What's the average in those blocks?
So that's an awesome point to bring up. And all the indicators are actually pointing to have a large increase in the participation rate within Generation Z, Generation X, and Millennials. So, and those are the three generations that are 53 and younger. I might be potentially forgetting one, but it's those. If you take a look at 2018, I think it's the midterm. Is that what it is?
Yep.
2018 midterm elections. There was record turnout for these generations, right? 53 to 18. And I would expect that to continue from the standpoint that the internet's here and we get to distill all the information ourselves. We don't have to pass through 7 filters to see what's actually going on. We can go to the source.
Well, I also think it's very interesting that now anyone can have access to that information, not just the elites. They can't control the narrative and say, well, according to this study, but it's done by this corporation who pays us, that funds our shit, says that Bernie's the guy or this person's the guy or Hillary's the person. They're going to 90%, according to the study, Hillary's going to win 90% of the delegates. They had that narrative, like 90%. And they were way the hell off. Now I think these things you're talking about are going to speak closer to the truth when it comes to the voting time. I am absolutely enthralled with your statistics now. Like, I'm just going to be, I got my alerts on already for you. So when you put shit out like that, I'm like, which one is it? I'm like, ooh, I can't wait to see this shit because the Texas one was interesting to me.
I was just about to bring up Iowa and Texas and New York. So what I like to understand on a macro, right, what's going on with the country, but then more specifically on a statewide level, because we get polling data on the statewide level, and I don't necessarily think that's the most representative of the collective of what that state is thinking. I think it's, they have 400 people or 1,200 people or 2,000 people that take a poll that they have to opt into, which creates biases just from opting in. And then the structure of the questions from poll to poll is a little bit different, which changes the outcome.
Yes.
So what I actually started diving into, I started with Iowa. And I don't know if you or any of your followers or viewers have looked at what the actual process is for the Iowa caucus. And it's literally a joke. I'm not sure.
It's overwhelming. That's what it is. To look at that, you're like, really? They're the first ones? I'm like, what the fuck?
And to give your viewers some context of what we're talking about, in Iowa. So they're the first to go in terms of putting out, I don't even know if I'm going to say this right, but correct me if I'm wrong, is they're going to be the first to go who are going to decide who their delegates are going to go to.
Yes.
And the process of doing this is completely retarded.
Yeah, it's madness.
So what happens is you go into a precinct and you divide up into groups of candidates. Like literally you and I go into like the fire station, right? And then we divide up into groups. Okay, you're supporting this person, you're supporting this person. We go into these groups, and then there's a group of undecided people. And then say in our group, right, where we're with Andrew Yang, we make somebody mayor, right, of our group, and they go around and try to facilitate to pull other people from other groups. So basically we're just going to a potluck. And then they have a hard timeline of 30 minutes where that happens, right? So for 30 minutes, we can go around and talk to other people. Does this sound like it's even slightly representative of the fucking state? This is like retarded shit at how this is a process that we actually use to elect our president. Like straight up, this is one of the steps in the process to get elected.
Is the fit in a room.
Oh my goodness.
To put people in one room. 320 million people are paying attention.
And you go into a room and you talk to each other for 30 minutes, and then you go away and there's another process of like how they're sorted and stuff like this. And
then you got to get the undecideds to come your way.
And you just play musical chairs for 30 minutes with your friends, right? Like, hey, come on over. Why don't you bring a potluck? I'll get the chicken, and you can bring like bread, and somebody else can bring soda. Like that, I don't think that's a good way. First of all, there's a ton of people that are left out of the representation in the state.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Because
I
work or this, that, and the other thing. I have a family, right? Like as you talked earlier about in our conversation, how growing up that might have been challenging for your mother to take time away to go do something like that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people like that where they're not able to do that.
Yeah. It's more like the people that are financially secure enough to participate are having a voice, which is the opposite of what we need to speak to because I think it says the top 10% owns 90% of the wealth. And that's the only people voting or a larger percentage of in that situation potentially. So instead of the farmer, mom and pop farmer deciding, it's the corporate farmer that decides to manipulates that system, or actually at least has a voice.
Yes.
I won't say manipulates, but has a voice. See, that whole thing of, I feel like you're at a skating rink when they roll the dice and you get to pick what like 6 corners type of thing. You're out, twos. It's just weird kind of thing.
We actually use that for our delegates. And also, so now in New York, so I look at the New York primary, and in the New York primary, there's about, I think, 224 or 244 delegates that are assigned based upon the voting proportions within each precinct or county in New York. And what ends up happening is there's actually 37 of those that are designated to party officials and like higher ups. So we don't know if that's one person that just happens to have all this power to take 37 delegates from New York. New York's a pretty populated state. I think it's like in the top 5.
Yes.
To take 37, so over 10% of the entire delegates for the state of New York, and place it on one candidate. We don't know if it's one person. Could be 37 with varying opinions that are representative of the state.
Yeah.
But I think you and I both know that's
not likely.
Exactly.
Not likely.
And that's why I want to look at like the actual data. Like what are people actually searching for on Google? What are people actually searching for on YouTube? How is their website actually doing? How is their social media doing? Where is the funds coming from?
I wonder if the media is allowed to participate in documenting that whole circle jerk in Iowa. I'm curious.
I think if we brought more awareness to what's happened.
Yeah, we should be like.
I think it would be a farce, and
well,
we should. If anybody's watching this and wants to do that for us and film it, and document what actually takes place, that would be lovely.
So Andrew Yang just opened up 2 offices in Iowa. One in Des Moines, and the other one is in There's another big city. I can't remember what the hell it's called. I feel bad. Sorry, Iowa. I know your capital. Des Moines. That's a lot to ask in American standards. But they have 2 offices now. Davenport, feel better.
Nice
So
recovery.
Davenport and Des Moines have offices now, and that's where some of those things are going to happen. So I'm sure that we might be able to have someone go there, because Yang Gang don't play. You know, we want documentation, we want statistics, we want real analysis, we want real data. That's why I think your shit is going to be consumed. Let's put it that way.
I appreciate that. It's fun and interesting for me. And I think what you're saying about the Des Moines and in Iowa and the other place that they have opened the office.
Davenport, yes.
Davenport. I apologize. I apologize. It was quick for me to forget that. I apologize. But having more awareness around the process of how a caucus works, I think the collective of people in Iowa and anybody who's watching from Iowa, you can let us know down below, but the collective of people in Iowa are probably, I would think that there's a decent proportion of the population there that doesn't think that's the best way to figure out who the collective is thinking is the most representative for the state.
Well, and also the demographics are significantly different in Iowa than most cities in the United States.
That's really, I haven't dove into that. That's interesting.
There's not a lot of diversity in Iowa. It's a predominantly white state, you know, because it's all cornfields and shit, you know. And I'm not saying that like minorities aren't farmers. I'm saying is predominantly factory farmers are owned by white people in Iowa specifically. So it doesn't really speak to the diversity of this country that needs to be represented. And for Iowa to be the very first one is really off-putting, because to me that shows a bias. The process has a bias itself. How many delegates are even a minority?
Yes.
Women? Are there any women?
And the other thing, the bias is actually amplified in my opinion when you look at Iowa, because what are we talking about? We're talking about Iowa because they're first. Why do companies used to be called? Why is AAA called a AAA? Because they would show up number 1 in the yellow
in alphabetical order. Yep.
Correct. So Iowa goes first, which has the effect of talking heads and media who are just going to talk about Iowa, whether that's representative of the country as a whole, based on what you just mentioned about the population is different than other states, and they're going to try to say this and extrapolate across other states to say this is what this state's going to do, this is what this state's going to do, and it gets way more awareness and shifts people's attention in a way that people don't talk about the subtleties of some of these things and how it actually plays out.
Well, and that's why Andrew Yang was actually, I watched a video about him at Iowa where he's like at a small establishment. Just he did like 5 events in a day or something like that, talking to groups of people, and he's sitting in front of a room. It might have had, say, 60 people in the room, because all the campaign people were there everywhere. So he had a room, 6 people show up to his room, and they're like, you know, what this and that, asking questions. He goes, you know what I see in front of me is I see 60,000 California votes sitting in front of me, because for every vote here is 1,000 correlated to California according to the math. And he goes,
exactly what I was just talking about.
This is 60,000 votes in the future. I'm trying to win, and I'm here to win you guys over, and I really want you to help me out, and blah, blah. He said that if he gets 40,000 votes, he wins Iowa, the whole damn state, because it's not that densely populated.
Oh, really? Is that it?
Yeah, it's not a lot of people. 40,000. Wow. That's the number.
I feel like that would be easy, but I don't know. I don't know what the population is or how. I've never
or who participates.
Or who participates. Or
yeah. So he said, if I get 40,000 votes in Iowa, I can win the whole damn thing. So that turns into 40 million.
To what we were just talking about.
It's California, which now California has the mail-in ballots earlier, like the same day as Iowa. Now California has a voice for the first time this year, and that will be super interesting to see at this time, where it's going to be a big difference, where Californians were a little more disengaged, because by the time it got to them, the horses were taken out of the race already. This bottom half fell off, and maybe California would have liked that candidate and could have perpetuated them, you know.
I just saw something about how there was, and I didn't pay attention close to the details, but I think it was North Carolina and 2 other states. One just very recently elected to all have their primaries on the same day. I think it's, I don't remember when it is, but there's 3 states now that have it all on the same day. And I think that we could probably see that trend to continue, but it might play out over the next several, to where they're pushed closer together.
Yeah, Super Tuesday, I think it's called, is where all the first primary states vote in the first whatever Tuesday or whatever. But then it shows.
I apologize, my very elementary understanding of politics. Yeah. I had no idea.
Well, and I only know this much because I just saw a graph. I don't know much about this shit either. I saw a graph where it lists this day, here's these 5 states. This day, here's 12. That's the biggest day, is that Tuesday has the most states at once.
Oh, okay.
And then Wednesday it's this, Thursday it's that, and it kind of breaks it down over a week, I guess. I don't know. But, and like the women I just interviewed, Lesbians for Yang out of Portland, they're late in the game. And they're like, our votes really don't matter in the primaries because the decision's already made. It's down to 2 candidates by the time it comes to them. And I think that's a little unfair. So I agree with them. This
is the, and I might get some hate in the comments. I've never voted before because I don't like, what is my vote? And we can go through that dialogue back and forth, but I never felt any urge to vote ever. I'm not even registered. I've never registered to even vote. And this is the first election where I'll actually probably vote.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And
awesome.
I think that the process to even register, I'm going to probably document because I literally don't, I'm going to have to go to just Google.
I think you are registered to vote because you have to register for the draft and turned 18.
I don't think I actually had to do that or that I was actually homeschooled my whole life. So I don't know if my parents did everything they were supposed to do back in the day. So I don't know if that's the case or not. It's
interesting. I don't want to know about that. I'll watch that video. That'd be interesting to see. How do you even know if you're registered? I just know because I had to register for the draft at my local post office. When I turned 18, I had to go to my post office and fill out a registration card, which enrolled me for the draft, which isn't going to happen, but nonetheless, it's a rule.
I could see Andrew Yang being the candidate that would, and this is something that I feel like I could support, that would be able to have enough dialogue and level up the conversations with leaders around the world to put together a collective of the most powerful countries in the world that are going to get rid of their militaries. And we can use those resources to better people's lives in a different way. Because there's on a collective of the top, say 10 or 25 countries in the world, the amount that's spent on military spending, I think is laughable. And we could use the money and the resources to do other things and better other people's lives and humanity as a whole. And we don't need, yes, I understand there's bad people out there, but I think that coming to a place and I know it wouldn't happen anytime soon, but coming to a place in the world where we can just have conversations instead of like hating each other or not having empathy for somebody else's point of view. I think that would be something that would be tremendously progressive and very, very liberal to say to like get rid of the military, you know. But
unfortunately, that's very ideological because it's a tough sell to say we promise, you know. But I like the premise. I love the premise. Why do we need a military? It's only to establish a border. It's just establish a border. This is our shit. Stay off our shit, or we're gonna shoot you. But it is what it is. That's how our world is formed today. We can't do anything about that right now. But my thing about the military spending, it's $760 or $780 billion a year. We'll round it off to 800 billion just to be funny about it, just for a good round number. If we took 10% of the military spending and actually took care of the military people, in the process, end homelessness. In 1 calendar year, we're going to take $80 billion from the military. They're still going to have $700 billion or $720 billion. They're not going to go broke. And we could actually build homeless shelters in every single state capital.
I used to work for the military as a contractor, and my background's in finance and accounting. I don't believe some of the things that I experienced were potentially legal. I don't know, or they were definitely not ethical. There is absolutely no incentive, and I know Andrew Yang talks about changing incentives. I think this in military and government as a whole, to change the incentives, to focus on the whole of what's happening, because the amount of money. So how it works is, if you get allocated a certain amount for your budget in the military for the areas that I worked on, I can't speak for the collective because I have no idea, but in the 2 areas that I did work in, you get allocated a certain amount of money, and if you do not spend that money, it has this exact opposite incentive of the real world, where if you spend all your money, you get more the next year, but if you spend less, you get less next year.
They'll put it somewhere else.
Exactly. In the real world, right? If you can be better with your money, you actually succeed. And these are the incentives that are in our military. And I would assume, and I have no data to back it up, that they're probably similar in our government, based on the people that or the things that I can see. There's just no incentive to spend taxpayer dollars in an effective and efficient manner whatsoever. And there's no talk or consideration at all. I see this stuff. I would see this stuff, and I'm like, this is absolutely there's zero. Maddening. Even if just slightly shifting the incentive, just a marginal, just a teensy little bit, could save millions of dollars a year.
Billions.
Yes, I was trying to be conservative there by saying millions, but the impact would be tremendous, because I'm sure that. Go ahead.
Well, let's think about this. When I was in the military for 3 months, we had to rotate secondary responsibilities. One of them was being in charge of the mess hall. You had to go work down there and help get food out and clean the place up and shit. Well, another one was you had to be a supply person, which meant you had to do all the ordering, which is a pain in the ass. No one liked it. There's no Microsoft Excel back then. So I actually made a Microsoft Excel thing with a marker. I put a little corner and I drew it down. I made blocks, say, this is for pens, this is for cleaning supplies, whatever the hell it was. And so people came to me and said, we need this by this day. So I color coded, and I had this whole system. The problem was pens. Pens pissed me off a lot. I became a pen Nazi, because they'd give us a pen. We had our pocket. We had to carry our ID in with the ship facing up, because the ship never sinks in the Navy, blah, 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 bullshit standards. But there's your ID and there's your pen. You don't have your pen, you're an idiot. Have your pen, you idiot. You got to write shit down. And so you have a pen there. To buy a box of those pens was like $14, which is like 10 of the cheapest pens you ever seen. And I was out and about, and I went to Office Depot, or whatever the hell it was back then, in Jacksonville, Florida. And I was like, son of a bitch, this is $2.99. So I bought them.
And you were buying through GSA probably, or something, whatever,
right.
The government approved websites.
Right. Or only the contractual suppliers is what it was. It's a closed system like Amway. And so I go buy those pens. I come back to the officer in charge of our department. I was like, hey, Lieutenant Spivey, $3, $14. Do you see a difference? And he goes, well, those are this. And I was like, no, actually it's backwards, because these are actually the $3 ones. These are 14. You can't tell the difference. What the hell are we doing? Let's go to Office Depot. He goes, we can't. I'm like, why? And he explains to me about the closed circuit supply system. I'm like, so fire them. They provide a product that's out. Just go over here. He goes, we can't. I was like, who makes that decision? He showed me that it's way over our pay grade to even consider it. It's at the DOJ department's level. And I was like, son of a bitch, no wonder. And we're spending that kind of money on that's just a pen. Now you're talking bullets, guns, paint supplies that you go through a lot of, where we're out there practicing. And there's a thing called a CIWS, C-I-W-S. It's an abbreviation for close-in weapon system. It fires a bullet, a 50 caliber bullet, every second, or every foot is a bullet. Every 12 inches is a bullet. It's 1,000 rounds per second.
Holy, 1,000 per second or per minute?
Per second.
1,000 per second? Holy crap.
It's designed to cut in half an inbound kamikaze, drone, missile, torpedo, whatever, or a boat. It's trying to T-bone you and blow you up. So it looks like an R2-D2 with 10 rounds of, or 6 barrels of like a 50 cal Gatlinburg type of. Well, it goes 1 second, 1,000 shells go flying, and we sweep them into the ocean. There's precious resources at the bottom of the ocean rotting. They just disintegrate.
And that doesn't even talk about the environmental impact.
Yeah. I was like, isn't that polluted? Because we can't touch them with our bare hands. It'll poison us. Like, you can't touch them with your bare hand. They have this this coating that keeps it from catching on fire because it's so hot. It fires so fast. 1,000 rounds a second. And I thought, well, we're dumping it into the ocean. Well, the ocean's a big place. It'll dissipate. I'm like, yeah, but then just keep dumping more of that shit. Eventually, it's going to be a higher percentage of contamination. And the fish, the coral reefs, the whole system. Well, we just sweep them off. I'm like, God damn it. I hated it. I had to sweep off $1 million worth of shells.
Yep. And $10 million worth of environmental damage.
Ugh.
Right? Or 100, you know what I mean? Like, who knows? Or like, it's that what you're talking about, because I worked on the finance and the accounting side, and like, well, we're not supposed to talk about like the areas, whatever we did, but very perverse incentives to, there's warehouses, there's warehouses full of paper supplies that are just going to go obsolete because they get wet or moisture gets to them, or we decide to actually use the internet and digital sources for all this stuff. And it's just purchased from the sole reason to execute on a budget, not with any actual reason behind it. And it's the happening from you and other people that I've talked to who have been in or done similar things, like whether it's associated with military or as like I worked as a contractor, and it happens across like all over the place. So if there's any type of, and that doesn't even get into how to win a contract and just rip off the government. It's just basically the government is just, it's changing some of those changing some of those incentives to not be the exact opposite of the real world will save taxpayers a shitload of money.
Well, I think we need to be more transparent about that stuff too. The whole decision to say, okay, I think the Senate, the whole Congress should be live streed. Every meeting, every word, every vote documented.
And so maybe you have to be a U.S. citizen if you're like, oh, this is like, national security, but like, who cares? Whatever, like,
well, I know everything's got some classifications to it, but when you're talking about voting for, say, welfare cuts, we're going to cut your Social Security. Son of a bitch.
I want to know who was there. I want to know who was there as well.
Everybody's parents over right now. Who's screwing us over? I want to see the hands go up, the yays and the nays, not just the totals at the end. This many red, that many green. Bullshit. Who is it? And there was a way to find it. I don't know how to do it. I'm sure it's not that hard, but it's more transparent, more accountable to your representation to say, you voted that down? Really? That's not what we voted for when we elected you. It's not what you said. So I think all this transparency needs to become a focal point. And I think that Andrew Yang's website reflects that. And also his lack of big money donors. Like, he's not looking for that right now.
And I can see that in the data that I'm looking at, both in terms of the data that I'm looking for I do the stack ranking on their donations, but also I live my life in a very strange way where I don't other than work, I don't spend a lot of time with people like in real life. I spend more time, like at work I do, and then I go to the gym, but other than that, like my girlfriend's in another state, and I spend the vast majority of the rest of my time online. I'm not like hanging out with friends or going out and do stuff. I spend the vast majority of this of my time online, and completely lost my train of thought of where I was going with that. But
we talk about the statistics that supports that Andrew Yang is transparent.
Oh yeah, so
about his donors.
I get this unique view, I think, and is that we were talking about this earlier, that I think Andrew Yang actually exhibits a lot of these characteristics that are over-indexing for people in terms of being authentic, being genuine, having humility, and trying to actually level up the conversation instead of like talking crap about somebody else or saying that your argument's stupid. Like some of the, I mean, it's
Trump bad.
Play. And I think those are those fundamental things, like trying to do the right thing, and like recognizing like how amazing his wife is, and like all of these other beautiful things that just nobody like else in the field is talking about, to the extent where it's like seems to the same level of authenticity that he's bringing to the table.
I think a good deep dive on analytics would be attacking points during a debate. Because I saw a chart that showed arrows, who showed who to hit, and how many. The darker the color was, the more they hit that person with insults. Here's Andrew Yang, nobody. Bernie, no one's sending him out. Bernie was attacked. He had no outgoing attacks. He had defenses. Yang's like, I got policies. Yang 2020.
That would be super interesting.
It's a really cool. I saw a couple graphics like that per debate, but to correlate them all together and say, man, Kamala Harris only talks about Trump. That'd be a good one too. Just who mentions Trump?
Yeah.
They all have to in a way, but some of them, that's their whole background. It's like Kamala Harris is like, Trump's bad. That's my point. Elect me and I'll get him done because I'll arrest him or some shit. She's a prosecutor, whatever. But some people, they don't talk about their policies, or just comparing the amount of time they talk about a policy versus a person. That'd be a great little chart to see.
I think and some of this stuff is super interesting. Like, so I'll take a look at the impact on their website, right? So we look at those three factors on somebody's website, and right after a debate, it's interesting to take a look at, because you have a ton of attention that's all aimed at one night, and in the next 2 days you get to see an answer of who actually won, because you can take a look at their website to see if their traffic increased. So if their ranking out of all U.S. sites increased drastically, then that person's a winner, right? They had they garnered more attention. Doesn't matter what the talking heads say, right? If we just take a look at the actual data, we're going to look at their website ranking in the U.S. If the website ranking went up, that's positive. If they went up the most at the highest slope, like they had the highest growth rate, you'd probably think that they might have had like a good debate.
A good showing. Well, something else too is even like to go minute by minute, like show the Google traffic per candidate at the minute, and then what they said to make that spike happen.
Oh, maybe I will live stream. Maybe I'll try live streaming. If you guys want to see something like that, let us know down below. But if I live stream the debate, not actually watching the debate, but the back end of what I look at.
Google Analytics. Yeah, because when Joe Biden mentioned that his son and wife died, or some shit like his wife died, his Google searches went up significantly at that moment. I'd like to know what which statements garnered the most interest, or because most people like my age didn't know his background, was like, oh, his wife died of cancer? No shit, let's Google that shit. So these little moments, is it out of pity and interest, or is it out of a policy? Andrew Yang says I'm giving away $100,000 or $1,000 to 10 people. Bam, like you said, a 45-degree interest on Google. But Biden had this thing about his wife dying. Wink, wink. Anyway, we're moving on. It didn't trend up. It was just a sudden spike. Like, oh, okay, looked it up. Never looked at him again. You know, like those would be very interesting to see if that statement would have kept Googling and more people found interest or had sympathy, or I don't know what that would mean, but it'd be interesting.
If what I'm seeing across the board right now, and this is the third time, so there's just 7 factors, right? So we've got Google search volume, YouTube search volume, their website ranking, their Facebook growth rates, their Twitter growth rates. And on Twitter, I actually take into one more factor on that, not only the growth rate of their Twitter following, but also the volume of tweets. When we're just going to assume right off the bat that nobody's using a bot here. I'm not sure how sophisticated they are, but we're assuming that. And so the volume of tweets for me is an indicator of the work that somebody's putting in, right? And then we have their YouTube channel and their donations. And what I'm seeing is that either Andrew Yang is holding steady or increasing in all those 7 factors over time. And this is the third time running through this ranking over the past 2 months, and I just see him continuing to go up and to the right. And I really like some of those ideas about taking a look at the real-time data as it's actually happening. I really think that would be some interesting, provide some interesting insights.
Because I think when Kamala Harris had an increase, it's because she insulted Joe or attacked Joe Biden and said, because I was that girl, which she wasn't. That's a lie, first of all. The rule that she was talking about was already in place like 7 years before her going to school. So she got a spike on a lie, technically.
What was the context of the situation? I actually did not watch the debate. I just looked at the data.
Okay, so during the debate, Joe Biden was talking about this, the moderator's question about voting on this busing minorities around the state of whatever the hell it was, or the country. He voted one way, and then he says now he wouldn't do that, this and that. But historically, he's been one way, I can't remember if this is good or bad, about busing students for diversity or something. But he said it wasn't.
Kamala Harris was saying.
And Kamala Harris goes, in the state of California, a little black girl was being shipped to one of these schools, and and your vote reflected on her. Then she goes, and that person was me, Joe. And he's like, huh? And you can see this weird little one. He's like, bitch, you know. and it worked. It worked. Even though it wasn't true, it still worked. So in that moment, truth didn't matter. But the storyline was compelling enough to get people to donate. It turned into donations, what it turned into. Donations and support and interest. So I'd like to see what those little things do. I'm interested in those little, that's the story being told, is the questions, the answers. Is it an attack or is it a defense of yourself? Is it a personal story about somebody you brought here who was burned to death and they survived or some shit, some sap story type of thing? These little pawns in the chess game they play.
Do you think that on a probabilistic basis, where do you think the chances are of Andrew winning the nomination? I mean, or what? At what point do we put him in the top 2 or 3? Because he's in the top on a lot of the rankings that I'm looking at and creating. But I'm a lot of people are not paying attention to what I'm doing yet. So there's an attention on these polls which aren't super representative. So like, if we use that as the gauge, at what point do you think we'll see him in the top 3?
I think what's going to happen is Joe Biden's going to self-destruct because of this whole controversy with his kid. He's done. He's a done turkey. The problem is the thing is the Biden supporters. I don't know. I'm just going to say 50% of them are disengaged politically, but they're still voting, and they vote on the populist. They don't really look into it. In the past, that's going to Bernie and Elizabeth Warren because they're the front runners. They're just voting for the front runner. Most likely to beat Trump's all they care. I think what's different this time is there's more information available. I think Andrew Yang has a higher propensity for absorption rate on other candidates because we have lots of stories of Trump supporters, lifelong conservatives, libertarians, independents, Bernies, Warrens, Buttigieg's, Harris's coming to Yang. I have never heard one story of a Yang supporter going to a different camp. The retention
I do hear
rate,
a lot of,
there's a lot of retention in his supporters. And then there's polling that shows that of his supporters, like 85% saying, this is who we're voting for, fuck the rest of them. There might be 15% that say, we're pretty sure, we're not sure all the way. There's little charts on that type of stuff too. Loyalty means a lot.
That's a great point because it allows him to, it's much more expensive to get an additional voter than it is to like retain that voter.
Yeah. So he's got serious retention.
Where do you think that's going to I'm curious. I think that potentially on the national one, I think that this debate could be tremendous, especially if he's able to pull something off like they did in the last debate, because that was insanely effective for him. So if they could do something very thoughtful and considerate, where it was so far off the wall in a lot of the ways, but nothing that's going to don't compromise your integrity and don't compromise your character. Don't do anything fucking stupid. But like very thoughtful way of like doing guerrilla marketing. I think that by itself could potentially put him right at the 3-4 spot within like 2 or 3, 4 weeks after this next debate.
I think he has one more trick up his sleeves that we know about that he hasn't used yet, which is the hologram.
What is? My ignorance, I don't have any idea what that is.
He has a hologram of himself.
What?
There's a video of him on stage. There's a video of him on stage with Tupac. With fucking Tupac.
What?
Yeah.
How does this work?
You gotta Google that shit, bro. YouTube.
Yeah.
It's better.
Yeah.
Someone in holograms have developed this thing. Say, here's a hologram of Andrew Yang on stage with Tupac. Da-da-da, da-da-da. And he's speaking on the microphone, kind of doing a little dance. He's just kind of goofing around.
What?
On it.
So how could he, it is a trick. How could you, I mean, there's so many different ways you can
guerrilla
use that.
Marketing on an epic proportion. Every single state capital or every single CNN office, if they're at CNN and they're fucking them over, every single CNN spot, every major city has a, CNN hub.
Office or something, yep.
Right out front in the state capital, have the projector. I'm not sure if they work outside, but a stadium, whatever, and have his hologram there and have people listening to the debate speeches of his responses live. Or if he has a rally like he had in LA, have it in every major city. Do like 5 of them at once, 5 rallies, and with his hologram, man, that's the forward part of this shit. That's out there.
Oh, wait,
he hasn't used it yet.
I think I'm grasping what you're saying, because if this technology is available where you can actually have a hologram that's slightly realistic in the sense that when people view it, they're going to see it's a person and you can sense that it's a 3D hologram.
Well, and it's live.
And so if he's able to actually do this, think about the possibilities of if you could clone yourself 26,000 times, right? Because if you could have a hologram and then you just have runners that put these things in at campaign areas, and you could do the same campaign, but it's going to have to be more generic, obviously, but you could do it across the whole entire state. So in multiple different areas. And I think that would be some very interesting from a strategy standpoint to talk about, but also to get the message out.
Here, I'm going to look this up on my phone real quick. I'm going to show you.
Please. That would, if that is, while you're looking that up, if there's that technology out there where you can create some type of hologram, I think that is, and do it live, so you could live stream your content, that would be absolutely insane.
Okay, so let me.
I would.
Okay, I'll make sure. Okay, so.
Got. What?
So he's up there getting down with Tupac on a hologram, bro.
Oh my god. Oh my goodness. That's
so
ridiculous.
He has this in the back pocket.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
So imagine this on a college campus. Which the kids will fucking dig it. A presidential candidate who had a dance off and a fucking
idea.
rapper show up at a LA rally, and they had a party.
Yep.
You see the LA rally? I mean, it's a party.
Anybody who's watching this who knows somebody should share this with somebody on Andrew's team, because this is an awesome idea. Doing exactly that with that hologram, figuring out how to do that.
I'm sure they got way better ideas than I'd ever dream of. But
no, every idea is a good idea.
But that's my prediction. Before the end of the year, that's gonna get broke out. I'm thinking more wintertime, because it's darker, longer. It's easier to get a hologram projected in darkness than light.
Very true.
It's not a summertime thing; it could be a winter thing where all these rallies got to be indoor in the north. So I'm thinking New York City, where he's from, and really stick a flag in the ground, be like, God damn it, we're here. We're going to be at Madison Square Garden, and we're going to have a goddamn hologram of Tupac with singing a song to bring out Andrew Yang, a gangster party, because he has that song, all he comes out to, Return of the Mac.
Okay.
A play on hip hop.
Oh, man. Yeah. this would be very interesting to see if
Hell yeah.
if he does something like this, or and I'm curious to also see, like, as he continues to grow, who's going to be like the top, 1, 2, or 3 people to drop. Like, I agree with your sentiment about
where's he
Biden.
gouging from?
Yeah, because I think Biden, what you just mentioned about like his son stuff, like I think he already put the knife in like far enough that I don't think he has any chance at this point. I don't know, like, could go the other direction, but I don't think he has any chance. But I'm curious to see who like drops out after this debate, because we have the most diverse collection of candidates.
Yeah, I feel like the bottom half is going to fall off because some of them aren't even going to qualify for this debate long enough the next one.
How many more debates are there?
I think there's 12 total. So this is only number 4.
Oh, okay. I had no idea.
I think it's going to be one a month. I believe it's just like one a month until then or some shit. There might be more often at the end. I don't know. I'm just guessing. But I think there's 12 total that they could do. But if one candidate gets over 50%, they can just cut off this is the person we're going with. And they can do it anytime they want to, which I don't like.
Wow.
Yep.
That's the RNC and DNC, I think, is just as many flaws as some of the other things that we've been, not necessarily flaws. They were in place, potentially, like, hopefully put in place for a thoughtful reason when they were put in place. Hopefully, that's what I'd like to think. But today, it's a different world than it was when they were.
I'm suspicious that this thoughtful reason is the same negative implications for me of power staying in power, period.
Yeah.
We got the steering wheel. We're going towards a different destination. Screw that. Turn on the blinker. We're getting over. We don't care how rosy that looks. We have to go this way because over there's potholes in the road. It's going to really mess up our vehicle of control. There's impending doom if they let the progressives get the steering wheel. I feel like the Democratic Party has a split personality right now of corporate Democrats, same old shit. And then there's the new age, the newer blood, the Andrew Yangs, the AOCs, the Ilhan Omar and all them to say, no, this country has some really ugly things about it. We need to change them. Not just say we're the greatest country on the planet. We're not. We are capable of atrocities.
Yes.
Killed millions of people. This country's on stolen land, for crying out loud. Let's acknowledge that, but they don't want to. They want to whitewash everything still. And that whitewashing's about played out.
And you and I think a lot of people are tired of the same like propaganda, the same, and I don't know, like, I'm not trying to speak conspiratorial at all, but the same message that comes out of these people, like, there's just zero trust that any candidate that's been in the system is going to be actually serving of the population, versus, like, say, Andrew Yang, people actually trust that he's going to be representative of the system. So if you're part of the system, I think it's almost like a downfall in the sense from the American population. If you're a part of the system from the system standpoint, it's like, oh, they're going to help you. But I feel like there's almost like a tipping point now where we can see this, like $10 million raised last quarter. That's fucking amazing.
And the average is only $20-something,
which is stunning.
I think they said 90-something% is below $200.
Wow, that's incredible. When I checked the other day to see if the other candidates had uploaded any of their data yet through it's like the federal something website where they have to report, and it wasn't all up there yet. But as soon as all that data's up there, I'm curious to dive into those numbers and see what it's like. It's gonna be.
I can't wait.
Very, very interesting. I'm also super curious for this next debate. I want to see what they're going to do. It's going to be very interesting.
I'll be there.
We're
going to be live streaming some shit. We're going to be interviewing people like a crazy. And Fred, just so everyone knows, Fred the felon is going to be in the house with the bobblehead. And it's going to be super fun. We're going to raise some hell and just have a good time and just do what Yang Gang does, man. We're just going to show up and we're going to blow up.
And the other thing that I noticed about the Yang Gang, I apologize, is that we've touched on a couple little heady things, but I think that the yin yang also helps like draw out those characteristics that we notice about Andrew Yang, where
Mhm.
you know there's empathy there, there's authenticity there, and there's honesty there to
Mhm.
try to do the right thing. And
Yeah.
I see that in the comments on the YouTube channel that as a collective, there's a lot more positivity than shit talking about other candidates.
Yeah.
And I think it's a healthy way to go forward. Period. Because we've
Well,
seen what the other way does.
and like I was telling you earlier before we started recording this thing, is to me, he has the most potential to have the broadest spectrum of people to vote for him. And all these policies can speak to everyone for different reasons, for their own reasons. You'll find a reason to support him. Maybe healthcare is the most important thing to you, and maybe you think the public option is the best way to go about it. Maybe you think UBI is stupid, but you'll take the grant, and as long as you get your insurance covered. Like if you're an entrepreneur, you want all your employees to be covered. Cool. I don't have to worry about that no more. I'll give them a $5 an hour bump in pay and keep them. Keep the good ones and cut the rest. You know, like it takes more weight off of opportunists or for business owners like you. You have all your people. Now you have to worry about the variable cost, which always goes up. It's not a variable like this. It's just kind of like it does this all the time.
Correct.
There's
Perpetually.
no downward trend on that insurance stuff. So your budget is blowed up before you even get started on a new business. Now to say, shit, man, if I got to pay, let's say I start out with like a lawn care service, I'm paying these guys $10 an hour and they're working over 40 hours a week. I got to give them insurance. Shit. Now it turns into $25 an hour is actually how you keep an employee. Or you pay 5% more in taxes, but you save $15 an hour and you can pay them 5 more and you pocket 5, they get 5. And the other 5%, the other $5 an hour goes to the insurance company. It's a win.
Well, I think putting the money in people's hands is, I mean, it's just like, it's so logical. It's so common sense sounding. It's, we can spend better, like I can spend my money better than you can spend my money to achieve happiness for me. And like, it's just common sense that giving people, there's so many people that are struggling just to live. Like my mom, like she lives on like $1,300 a month, and that pays for her fucking mortgage, and she gets like food boxes from her church and stuff, you know, and like
she doesn't
$1,000
depend
a
on
month,
charity,
and she's got food stamps. Like it's just, you know what I mean?
It's crazy.
That would be tremendous for her. It would be like doubling her income. Well, and she worked as a mother. So there's 7 kids in my family, and she worked. I was homeschooled, so she didn't work in the workforce for 25 years or so. As we all grew up, 30 years, and I think it was low 30s. And so you have the gap of 30-something years where you're not in the workforce, and then you come back to work and you make peanuts.
Yes, and entry level in your 50s.
And having an extra $1,000 a month for is crazy. And she's 60 something. She's almost 70 years old now. And yes, I think that we both agree that it seems like a intelligent way to spend the money, other than creating another program for the government to just get bloated with the variable cost just going up over time. It's just you know.
Yeah, it's inevitable. But my thing is he has the most potential to pull in voters from every direction and really flip the table cart, just flip the apple cart over and be like, okay, we're here, boom, democracy dollars. We're going to flush out this corruption with democracy dollars. It's $100 a person. Okay, done. And I think that'll inspire states, counties, and cities to do the same thing.
Why is it so complicated to even vote? I apologize. Why is it even so complicated to vote? Like, why can't I just vote from my phone? I would have. You know what I mean? Like,
that's something Andrew Yang is a big proponent on. He's like, if you can pay your taxes with the IRS online on your phone, I was telling someone, I can take a shit at Walmart and do my taxes. I should be able to sit on my couch and vote.
Correct.
Like, you can literally take a shit and pay your taxes from the comfort of a Walmart bathroom.
And you can't do that for voting, which is insane.
Nope. It's so secure for our taxes. but it's not secure enough for our voting, which is just, come on, man. We got to figure this shit out.
Correct. People bring up like, oh, well, there's scams, and you saw what happened with Russia and this, that, and other thing. You see what we're working with. I think anything moving forward off of that is a positive direction. We're going to stumble. We're going to make mistakes along the way. It's happened. It's inevitable. But I think being naive to like the changes in the world of what is actually happening is just not, like, burying your head in the sand is just not a good strategy. You know.
Well, and I think
you see that with him.
Well, I think the only limitation to that is people that don't use smartphones. But the big difference changer fundamentally long term is the fact that Elon Musk is hip to hip with Andrew Yang philosophically. Elon Musk wants to give the world 5G internet for free. The world. Wow. He says, I can put enough satellites with his rockets, you know? He goes, I can put enough satellites to cover the entire planet. You could be on top of the mountain or on the middle of the Atlantic and have 5G cell phone reception or internet reception. Wow.
Could you imagine?
You know what's going to happen to Verizon? Bye-bye, Verizon. We don't need your cell phone towers no more. That's going to be a real power move to give away something that people are making billions off of. Of course, they're going to lobby the shit out of that.
When you mentioned smartphone, yeah, for sure, 100%. When you mentioned smartphones, I think that as a country, we and then Andrew Yang or anybody who is capable of doing the job, I think we need to have some incentives to increase the usage of technology, because there's almost a stigma for people who are I'm not going to say elderly, but just somebody who's like, say, 65, right? That's not super old. There's plenty of people who are like just strong at 65, or 75 but there's also like a stigma to like trying new things in a way. And I think the change in either incentives or talking about that stigma to either get rid of it or give people incentives for all ages to, because like you and I are probably just going to continue using technology until we're that 85, and then there's a new technology and we're that person. So like changing the incentive for everybody to continue to use technology so that certain portions, the portion of people who don't use the internet are going to be left out. They're going to be left out. The money that's being made online, the impact that's happening from line, there's going to be a portion of the population just completely left out over the next 20 years, and if something doesn't change.
Well, that's the thing. Andrew Yang also has a policy about making voting day a holiday, a national holiday. 7th national holiday, period.
Wow.
You don't have to work. Go to, you go vote. Most places do that in other countries. It's your day off to go vote.
I didn't know that at all.
I personally would like to see Andrew Yang pick up one of my ideas, but it is my idea to say, and I can't own it. I must have heard it somewhere else. There's no way I thought this on my own, but it's still in my head. Instead of saying, like in Australia, it's a requirement to vote. Well, what if we just said, if you don't vote, you'll get $20 less, $100 less in tax returns. It's not out of your pocket directly, but it's indirectly going to affect your tax returns. Say, okay, if you vote, you're good. But if you don't vote, it's going to cost you $100 in your tax time. It's not, it is a penalty, but not a stiff one. It's going to change your life. $20, whatever it is, 100, whatever the hell they want to do. But say, we want to incentivize you to, we're going to pay you to vote by not taking your money.
Has you, because you're following the context of what's happening a lot closer than I am. Is there any dialogue happening around the terms in like the Senate and the House? I think that lifetime, like
he has two more policies. One, a 12-year cap on Congress.
Yes.
And you can't be a lobbyist before or after. Close that loophole. Yes. Secondly, Supreme Court, 16 years. That way, every president gets to appoint 2 people in their terms. Every 4 years, you get 2 people. That will be
intelligent shit.
retired out to keep new, fresh ideas. Because when that whole thing was decided, Supreme Court justice is a life appointment, is when people died at 65. And you don't get in until you're like 40 or 50 because you have to prove to be a good, people living to be 100. And now they're putting people in there in their 40s. That's 60 years of stacking the debt.
Person.
Stacking the debt, you know.
Yeah.
So he wants to do term limits. And if you're a justice, you can only do it for 16 years total. And then that way, if there's people there's already 16 years, we're going to phase them out of course, Ginsburg would probably be the first one. She's 90 something years old. But phasing people out that are like, okay, you've been here the longest, you're the next one to go in 2 years. In 2 years, it's you, and kind of keep phasing them out like that and have a rotation. That way, every president, no way in hell McConnell can hold it up and not let you vote on it. Every president gets 2 people to appoint and float and retire 2 more. Mm-hmm. It's almost like picking a jury, you know? Saying, well, the country voted me in because we believe this to be true. These 2 people stand in the way of what the people voted for. You're out. Simple.
Yes. And getting some new thinking, because you get, and the same thing with like Congress, like a 12-year and the not lobbyists. 12. I mean, I think that's just common. I mean, I think probably like a decent portion of the population is like, yeah, we should have done this 37 years ago.
Well, and also it speaks to the corruption that you can't be a lobbyist before or after. Think about it. If I'm a lobbyist and you're in the house right now and I come to you and say, hey, buddy, it's been a great year. Here's $400K. Just keep making sure cigarettes are legal for 18-year-olds. And we're going to really try to get it to 16 to be cool.
Well, and the thing, so I'm in business, and I've been, I love business. I get home from the gym and I read about this kind of stuff, and it is a lot more than people even realize, and not necessarily corruption, but there is that going on too. But the sense that you don't even have to say that. You just give me $400. You don't have to say anything at all.
Yeah, whatsoever. I know what you want.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And this kind of thing happens all the time in business.
But here's the thing in that relationship. If you're the senator, I'm the lobbyist, you trying to get done what I pay you to do, you get voted out. I run for years plays. You become the lobbyist to fund me. It's this weird little circle jerk. And there's so many lobbyists.
I had no idea.
Yeah, think about it. If you get voted out because you try to support my idea, don't worry about it. I'll take your spot. You support me financially. We'll keep each other's backs. Then I'll be the senator, and you'll pay me $400,000. And meanwhile, you're going to make millions.
Wow.
And then when you're done and you get voted out, the next guy is going to take your spot. Then I'll be his spot. It's just weird little revolving door of you get voted out. Okay, we'll stick a lobbyist. We'll promote this lobbyist and I'll become a senator. And that's how you get so much corruption. And so he wants to close that door, slam it shut, and whatever's sticking in there gets chopped off, you know?
Literally just from this past 3 to 6 minute conversation is like something like this is exactly what I would vote for. But this is what I'd vote for Andrew Yang for this kind of stuff, because we just talked about what happens in the military. I would bet there's a tremendous amount of money that happens with government workers too, and I know there's a lot of great, awesome, super hard, super smart working like people for the government. There's also a lot that are not, and it's not any of them. It's the way that whoever's created the system and who has the power. Like if I run my company and people are not happy, like that's not their fault. That's my fault because it's my fucking company.
Yeah.
Like I set the tone. I run it.
Yep.
Right. And so
it's definitely top down. As far as I'm not big on authoritarianism, but I'm big on top down purpose.
I think that's true. No, I didn't mean to imply that by any stretch of imagination. I do. Thank you for pointing that out. I didn't mean to apply that in any stretch of imagination, but the way that it's structured, the incentives, because the way it was structured are incorrect, or have some just perverse incentives to do things that are not in the best interest of the collective.
Oh, hell yeah.
Like,
yeah, definitely.
And that's what I meant from the macro authoritarian type of viewpoint. They're working within the system that's been created in the past, and they don't have any incentive to
Yep.
spend money efficiently.
So think about this in our little discussion, just between me and you. We've brought up democracy dollars, Congress term limits, Supreme Court term limits. Voting day is a holiday. Voting's a holiday. Online voting, and he has another thing. It's automatic register. You get your license, you're registered. No more.
Yeah, I literally have no idea. I have no idea how to register. I'm 34-year-old. I have an MBA. I have no idea how to register.
Yeah. So I'd like to see how you do that. But all of that information, dude, we've covered in one conversation. Now, this conversation can happen everywhere, on the street or at work, which probably get fired for at work, but maybe go have a drink after work. Let's put it that way. But that's why I started this whole thing, so I can't talk about this at work. I spend more time at work than anywhere else, and I'm being muted. I can't have it. They want us to shut up, That's over. We all have a voice now with this damn computer and our cell phones where the information's available and our voices will be heard by some more than others. But nonetheless, we have the freedom, and now if we get the resources in the right hands, game over. This whole thing's flipped. And now we're going to have a true democracy with true representation.
I think you're 100% on with moving in that direction.
Hell yeah!
And I appreciate you reaching out to me, and I appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with me. I know we've talked about a lot of different things before we got on here, so I just want to thank you and take the time to say that I appreciate what you're doing and appreciate you reaching out to me and taking the time to do all this.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see your next couple of breakdowns. I'm going to be gobbling that shit up. And I really hope that Nerds for Yang reach out to you to talk about statistics and analytics, because Tom is a analytical genius as well.
Tom, reach out, brother. I'm happy to do something.
I'm gonna link it to him. He'll get it. Just depends if he has time to watch it. But you and him would be this freaking weird little number thingy,
We've had some interesting conversations.
Absolutely, man. Like, he could bring you on and live stream the analytics on Google while he's doing it about something else and really get a matrix going there.
Because I bet we would have some very interesting conversations.
Hell yeah.
Because we have a common theme that we're talking about in terms of Andrew Yang, but the way that the context you have is much more granular than I have. And I have a feeling that Nerds for Yang Tom might have might have both of those things.
Yeah, he has.
Just be an interesting. It would just be a very interesting conversation.
Absolutely, I hope I can make that happen. I'm gonna try my best. But yeah, I can't wait. So, where can everybody find you when your next videos come out? Your social media. Where can everybody find you at?
Well, hopefully there's a link in the description. You can just jump over and say what's good. And I'll probably just have Instagram or YouTube down below. Those are the two that I use the most. I am on Facebook, but don't use it that much. But if anybody wants to jump over and say what's up, I also like to think of myself as a friendly, nice person. So if you want to reach out and just say hi, I watch your thing, I will, respond. It's me responding for everything. So
yes, I hear you there. But I think if everyone, I had ideas today that helped spark something for you to think about. And
you did. I appreciate that.
Thousands of others that will also. So if you guys have ideas of something he could layer on top of each other to give us a better indicator of trajectory, he can put it together, man. I mean, you guys got to go watch his videos first of all to see what he does with it, and you'll understand why I'm so excited to see more information be analyzed at that macro and micro level. It's awesome. I really appreciate your work. Yang Gang's gonna love you. I just got to introduce you now to the rest of them. It's going to be booming for you. You're going to get some talks. It's awesome.
Thank you.
All right,
man.
Well, I appreciate your time, man. Any parting words for the Yang Gang?
Stay strong and stay positive, stay kind, and have an awesome fucking night.
Good stuff, man. All right, guys.
Great.
Yang Gang, baby.